Hi there, this is Chris at Motolegends, the chap in the cap, here today to talk to you about Daytona motorcycle boots. Now, Daytona make the world's best boots. I can't think that there are many people who are going to disagree with that assertion. It's a frustratingly old-fashioned and traditional company. They have not a clue about marketing, but what these guys do is simply make a boot that is superior to anything else on the market. There really aren't many people in the industry who would disagree with that assertion. Factory was started by two brothers, Helmut and Reinhard Frey, back in 1957. Factory is based in Bavaria in Germany. If you go to the factory today, and it's difficult to get into the factory, but I've been there and I've seen Helmut, one of the owners and the founders and the manager of the business, still operating one of the machines in the factory, while his brother Reinhard may well be down the other end, sweeping bits off the floor, making sure that things run smoothly. So these guys are pretty obsessive. They are concerned about one thing only. They do not want to create a motorcycle clothing empire. They're not going to make helmets. They're not interested in making jackets, in gloves, in pants. All they want to do is make the world's best motorcycle boots. Now, they use the best components, and their view is that that's just the way it is. They choose the most expensive leather, and I'm going to talk about the leather in a second, but where they get to is they're just going to use the best. They add up the price of that, they put their markup on, and that's the price of the boot. These guys are not operating in a marketing fashion. They're not trying to hit a price point. They just want to make the best boot, and then the price is what the price is. If it's too much for you, it's fine. You do not have to buy a Daytona boot, but if you want to buy the best boot in the world, you buy Daytona. So this is a boot, this is the Roadstar. It's just one of many boots in the range, and later on in this video I'm going to run through the entire range very quickly, but I'm just going to highlight some things about this boot that explain the attention to detail that you get out of somebody like Daytona. First thing is the leather. Now, they use the most expensive leather. It is a hydrophobically treated leather. Now that hydrophobic means that it's water repellent. That is not a coating that's put on once the leather hides in the factory or once the boots are made. When the leather is tanned, it is treated to be hydrophobic, to repel water. It's a super soft leather, so what confuses some people at times is this is a very protective boot, but it doesn't feel immensely strong and rigid. It is, but comfort is a big thing with Daytonas. Yet you put a Daytona on and they feel immediately comfortable. So the leather, whilst tough, is actually very soft and it's water repellent. Not of course that the waterproofing in a Daytona boot comes purely from a water repellent leather. Daytona do a range of boots that are not waterproof at all, but where they do a waterproof boot, they will only use Gore-Tex. So every boot that is waterproof will have a Gore-Tex lining. You will have a gusset that will come up full height. You will have a band around here. The idea of this band is that if water hits the ground, comes over the top of the boot, it will be caught here. It won't run down into the foot. The fact that you've got a water repellent leather, that's a nice thing to have. This is always going to stop your foot getting wet anyway, but the fact is that if the external leather doesn't allow water into the boot, then you've got a boot that is incredibly waterproof. The membrane doesn't have to work as hard. In terms of getting into the boot, you've got typically on Daytonas, although not on every boot, you've got a double zip arrangement. Now, that means getting in and out of a Daytona is really easy, or relatively easy. Little trick, when you put a Daytona boot on, make sure that goes right down to the bottom, but make sure that the inner zip is undone, that you try to do this zip first, because a curved zip, if you're having problems getting into the boot, if it's quite tight, and quite often when you first put a Daytona on, I'd expect it to be tight initially. This zip is going to be quite hard. If it's too easy, there's a chance that the boot is too large for you, but you pull that around, and then, only then, you do this zip. If you've got the inner zip done up, it just makes that zip at times almost impossible to do up. In terms of protection, the protective elements, you have an ankle protector on both sides, but you can't feel it. And again, typical of Daytona, a lot of their proposition is about comfort. So this is a protector that is lined with open cell foam. So in many motorcycle boots, you put them on and you can kind of feel it on your ankles. You can feel the protectors. You can't. They're there, but because they are backed with an open cell foam, you don't know they're there at all. You've got a hard toe protector all around the edge here, and where you need it at the end of the toe. Some people put these boots on and they press them here and they go, well, that's not very tough. Well, that's done on purpose. This is where you change the gear. That's not actually where you need the strength in a boot. You need it across the width of the foot, and you need it in the toe area. But by the time you come back to the gear change pad, we want it to be a little bit softer, because if that's hard, you just have no feel on the controls. You can't tell you're changing gear. So that's a feature of Daytona boots. I think it should be a feature of every boot. We don't need toughness and hardness there if we've got it here. At the back, we've got a hardened insert, a counter here, so that's nice and tough. Whilst we're at the back, there's a 3M Scotch-Lite reflector. You've also got a concertina panel here at the front and the back that just makes the boot easier to articulate. On the front, you've got a hard plastic shin protector, but again, it's protected or covered on the inside with a latex foam. So when you've got these boots on, they are protective. They're as good as any boot out there, but they don't feel like a piece of high-end protective equipment. They're lovely to walk around in. You can't feel this chin protector. They are supremely comfortable. One of the things that I would say about a Daytona boot in terms of sizing is they're fairly generous on fit. A lot of their boots come in narrower and wider fittings. The natural fitting is quite wide. You have to have a very wide foot indeed to need a wide fitting in a Daytona. We would often say that if you're a 42, you would get into a 41 in a Daytona. So you just need to bear that in mind. They are quite generous. They're not particularly long, but they're quite generous in the width of the foot. So it is more than common here in the shop. In fact, almost always, if somebody comes in and says, I'm a 44, we say, fine, we go and fetch a 43, and that normally does the case. Not invariably, but often. Another major feature in terms of a boot's safety, and again, this is common to pretty much every boot in the range. On the inside, you'll have what we call just a climatic insole. That's the kind of inner sole, shaped inner sole that you get in most boots, in shoes as well. That just gives you some shaping in the arch and keeps the foot in place. But inside, and I might get Mike to do a close-up of this later because I'm not sure you'll see it here, but here on the inside there is a full-length plastic insert. That gives the foot a certain degree of rigidity and strength, but embedded into that, underneath that plastic insert, is a galvanized steel inlay. So that's what gives the boot this incredible rigidity. So here, it's just not possible to twist this boot. That's important. That's an area where you do want strength, because if you come off the bike, a car runs over your foot or something happens or it gets trapped, that's where you want strength, and there is absolutely no give there. In terms of the sole, that's an anti-grease, non-slip sole, exactly what you need for road riding. But now I want to talk about one feature that is, I think, particular to a Daytona that I've not seen from any other boot manufacturer. And I mention it now because if this sole wears out, Daytona will replace it. I don't know of a single boot manufacturer in the industry that will do that. So let's say you've been wearing these for 5 years, this has worn through because you've been rubbing your feet along the ground occasionally, the boot is starting to leak. You bring it in to us, we send them off to Daytona. We must send back to Daytona probably half a dozen boots every month. They will change the sole, they will change the gear change pad, they will change the zips, they will change the inner waterproof lining, they will rebuild the boot. Now, I suppose one reaches a stage where it just isn't worth, if you're going to do all of those in one go, because this is not a free service, obviously, you will reach a point where you're basically buying a new boot. So it's not worth doing that. But if, for example, everything is fine, the only thing that needs replacing is the sole, it's certainly worth bringing it in, because when you buy a Daytona, you're kind of buying a boot for life. And that is why you pay so much for a Daytona. In most instances, you can buy a boot that purports to do what a Daytona does for certainly half the money. So a boot like this, the Roadstar, is more or less a £400 boot. I think as we record this video, it's about 420. You can easily buy a boot that is a 200-pound boot that's waterproof, that is going to protect your feet, is going to have ankle protectors, toe protectors, heel protectors, and so on. But they won't be as comfortable as a Daytona. They won't be as protective as a Daytona. You will not have a Gore-Tex membrane. So in the margin, you will not get a Daytona. But the main thing is, you can be wearing these same boots in 10, 15, even 20 years time. And we have people who have ridden huge miles in these. They just bring them in every now and again, every 5 years, whatever needs doing gets done, and then they carry on. So our view is that if you take a boot like this, so let's say this is a 400-pound boot, you will be wearing these. As long as you look after them, you will be wearing these in 10 years time. That's £40 a year for the most comfortable, the most protective motorcycle boot you can find. I have to say there is one caveat to this facility whereby Daytona will repair the boots. That is, you have to look after the leather. Now, you can use any cream. Daytona has their own set of lotions and potions, and normally I'm not the kind of person who gets taken in by those things. So when I go to a shoe shop and buy a pair of shoes and they come out and say, "Would you like our cream, sir?" I go, "No, it's fine. I've got shoe polish at home." But when they tan these boots, when they tan the leather for these boots, it has a certain blend of waxes and oils. Daytona's creams, their refresher creams, have that same blend of waxes and oils. So you do not have to use them, but it's not an expensive, it's a little a tube of stuff. I think it's worth buying, treating these boots, keeping the leather soft and supple. And the reason you need to is, if you try to send these boots back and you want a new sole, the only condition on which they will not take these boots back is if this leather is cracked. And they won't replace the sole in those conditions, because once this leather is dried out and cracked, then they cannot guarantee waterproofing. Now, you should be doing this anyway, because it's important to maintain the waterproofing and effectiveness and the comfort of the boot. When you're riding on a motorbike, the boot takes an immense amount of punishment. When it's raining, you've got the rain bouncing off the floor, you're doing 17 miles an hour, it's freezing cold, or you've got the engine heat, or in the burning sun. It's the shoes that take a lot of beating. And it is worth spending some time every now and again, depending on the mileage you do, just to keep the boots nice and soft and supple. They will be more waterproof, the leather will do its job, and you will be more comfortable. So that's my review of the basic generalities of Daytona. We love their boots. We are frustrated at times beyond belief at the way Daytona behaves, because they are, if I were to say 20th century, at times I think of them still as 19th century in terms of some of their practices. But they do a fabulous job. They make a wonderful boot, and if you want the best, you just have to pay for it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go through each boot. We do about 12 boots from the Daytona range. We don't do every boot by any means, but I just want to quickly take you through all the boots and explain to you what each boot does, what it specializes in, why you might want to buy one boot as opposed to another. So let's move on to that. Let's look at the different boots. So having talked a little bit about Daytona boots, why we think they're the best in the world, how to look after them, and so on, we thought maybe it was appropriate to go through the entire range. Now, I suppose this is not the entire range. There are some race boots that Daytona do. They are fantastic boots. They've got a carbon carcass. They are the business. But we're not that kind of company, so we don't do those boots. But here we have pretty much the entire selection of road boots, touring boots, commuting boots. You will, by the way, find videos on just about all of these boots on the relevant pages on the website. I think as we record this towards the middle of December, we still have to put up some of the videos on the ladies' boots, but certainly on the men's boots, if you go to any one of these models, you'll find a more detailed video than we can cope with here. So let's go through the entire range. This boot on the end is the Roadstar. It is the quintessential Daytona boot. It is the most popular boot in the range. It does everything. It's supremely comfortable, it's protective, it's everything you would expect of a Daytona. These two boots are variations on the Roadstar. One is called the M-Star and one is called the Lady Star. They are the same boot in essence, but they've got a slight lift in the heel. It's a 6 centimeter lift in the heel. Now that's important if you've got a bike that's perhaps just a little bit too tall for you. If you find when you're maneuvering on the bike, when you're at the traffic lights that you're having to stand on tiptoe. With boots like this, you can actually be on tiptoe, but the whole sole of the boot is on the ground, giving you greater purchase, giving you greater stability. So some people just can't get past the fact that they've got a heel lift in. Well, that's up to you if you're prepared to drop your bike. But honestly, these boots make a lot of sense if your bike is just a little bit too tall for comfort. This is a short version of the same boot. Basically, this has also got a heel lift. So this is called the Max Sports. So it's a shortened version of the Roadstar, but it's also got the heel lift in. This is called the Travel-Star Pro. Now, this is a boot that was originally created for the UK police. Back in the day, and this boot's been in the range for about 10 years, it was the only boot that was PPE approved. Now, all boots have to be PPE approved, but at the time, this was the only one. It's a slightly upgraded version of the Roadstar. It's a slightly higher shaft. It's got a slightly thicker shin plate. It's got two flaps over the Velcro zips, as it were. So that's just a marginally improved version. Not a lot of difference, but if you want the ultimate in terms of road-going Daytonas, it would be the Travel-Star Pro. This is the Strive. This is about as sporty as it gets in their touring range. It is a lighter weight boot, so a more summery boot, but it's someone who's got a sports touring bike who wants something that's a little bit sexier than your average Daytona. Same boot, all the same facets apply, the galvanized steel, shank in the sole, all of those things, but it's got a toe slider, it's a little bit lighter, it's got some extra areas of protection. So a slightly sportier Roadstar. This is called the Spirit. All these boots, by the way, we only do the Gore-Tex versions of these boots, and at times on the internet it can be confusing. You can find all of these boots a lot cheaper, but often those are the summer range. Here in the UK, the importer only brings in the Gore-Tex versions. This is the Strive. This is a summarized version of, again, the same basic concept. It's got perforated panels, it's a lighter calf skin, so if you're the kind of rider who doesn't go out much in the winter, if 90% of your riding's in the summer, you want a boot that's a little bit more breathable, a little bit lighter, even easier to walk around in, then the Strive is the one you'll go for. Ladies boot, this having mentioned that there's a boot here called the Lady Star, which had a heel lift. This is another version, it's called the Lady Pilot. It's in essence a very similar boot. It's slightly more feminine looking, a little bit more feminine looking. It's got a bit of a heel in it, whereas here it's totally hidden. So in essence it does the same job. Again, it's got the 6 centimeter heel lift, but it looks a little bit more ladylike. This is the SL Pilot, so the short pilot boot. Again, the same with that heel, shorter version, again with a 6 centimeter heel lift. This boot is the Aero Sport. This has been around forever. It is, in essence, a cut-down Roadstar. It does not have a heel lift. It's just an easier, lighter boot if you want to ride in a short boot, but if you want all the protection and safety and comfort of a Daytona, this is the boot you go for. None of these boots are what we call sexy, so there are cooler-looking short boots, but if you value functionality over form, then that's a boot that you should look at. This is a boot, a couple of years ago, Daytona told us that they were going to make a trainer. Now, this is their trainer, not exactly what we would call a trainer, but it's a trainer in Daytona's world. This is about as cool and hip as it gets from our friends in Daytona. It's a really comfy boot in the same way that Daytonas are. It's waterproof, it's safe, you've got the shank in the sole, all of those bits. It's got quite a neat lacing system that you can read more about on the website. So even though it's got laces all the way down, it's really easy to get into. So it opens really wide. You then just pull on this system, you pull it tight, and you've laced up in a matter of seconds. So it's a really nice boot. I suppose slightly cooler looking than this boot, which just remind me is the Aero Sport, but in essence they do the same thing. This boot, or these boots, these are known as the AC Classics. Daytona, I suppose, eventually realised that there's a big growth in the retro market, people riding cooler bikes. In those kind of bikes where you're riding jeans, maybe an open face helmet, leather jacket, you do not necessarily want to wear a traditional full height or even a short height black leather boot. So they have brought out what they think is a cool boot. it's based on a walking boot. So it's a little bit different to most of the boots out there of this ilk that are more like a Caterpillar or a Timberland. This is unashamedly has as its base a walking boot. The upsides to that is that it's incredibly comfortable to walk in. It's a super solid boot. It's as strong a boot as you're going to find in terms of this style. It's a fantastic piece of kit, and if you're looking for one of the best short boots out there that you can wear under a pair of jeans on the kind of bikes we're talking about, then you should look at the AC Classics. So that's the current Daytona range. A couple of points I want to make. You will find Daytona boots discounted on the internet. It's just one of those products. Now here at Motolegends we have our famous price beat guarantee. It's a 10% price beat guarantee. So I'm just going to take a couple of seconds to explain what that is. In essence, if you find any one of these boots, indeed any product that we sell, being sold cheaper by anyone else, we will beat their price by 10%. So if there's a boot that's £450 and you find someone doing it for £400, then our price will be £360. So we will always be the cheapest. That's an offer, by the way, that only applies to the UK, but if you find these boots with a German or an Italian retailer, we will match their price, including their P&P. So whatever you buy from us, but particularly these boots, you will not find any of them cheaper from any other retailer. So that's the boots. You'll find them on the website, more detailed videos on all of them. If you want to go to the website, obviously the address is www.motolegends.com. If you would like to subscribe to our email bulletins about new products, and in fact we're going through a process of doing videos on lots of our back catalogue of products, but we've got bulletins going out every week of the year, then you can do that on the front page of the website. There's lots of little square boxes on the front page of our website. They're called tiles. There's one there for subscribing. Click on that. It's nice and easy to do. Then you'll get all of our bulletins as new products go into the warehouse. If you'd like to receive your information videographically, video reviews like this, then we would be delighted if you wanted to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which you can do on the subscribe button down there. If you are so excited by these boots that one of them you feel you just cannot live without, then if you go to the icon top right of the screen, that will take you direct to our Daytona boots page, and there you can choose the boot that you want to look at. Anyway, we hope you found this review interesting. This has been Chris at Motolegends. I hope to talk to you soon.